TWSBI Shootout! And today we'll be having a look at these two pens, the TWSBI Diamond 540 and its successor, the TWSBI Diamond 580. Now, as you can see, these are two highly similar pens. I'll show you how to take them apart. I'll show you how they write. Both have different nibs, so it's hard to compare them in that regard, just to give you an idea of, you know, wetness, that kind of stuff. As to the pens, there is a good video. I refer to that in the taking apart part of this video too. A very good video by Brian Goulet, the Ink Nouveau, on YouTube, in which he goes through all the differences between the two pens. So very briefly, the 580 has a bunch of things that were added to it to preclude cracking of the pen. It's plastic, it cracks, etc. So they did stuff with that. Okay, now apart from that, I mean, the two pens really have a lot in common. They have a lot in common the way they look. This is the 540. A nice, I like the pens. It has a decent nib. I've always appreciated that. And then you have this 580, which also has a decent nib, and it's one that I like too. And as this, I mean, usually I try to compare these pens in the shootout. You know, I tell you that one is bigger than the other, but it's pretty much the same pen. It's just a new incarnation. So I think what I have to do here is just stop talking now, because I'll just keep repeating myself and pointing out that the pens are so similar. I'll show you how to take the two apart, then I'll do a writing sample, and that's pretty much it. If you want the 540, I suggest you hurry up. This is April 2013. The pen is discontinued, so if it's no longer on TWSBI's site, I guess your only option is eBay types of auction sites. That's all there's to it. So let's go on. Alright, so here we have, let me see, the TWSBI Diamond 580 and the TWSBI Diamond 540. I'm not going to cover all the details, the differences between the two pens. Brian Goulet on the Ink Nouveau channel on YouTube has a very good video in which he shows all the differences, all the minute detail. I'm not going to do that. So, I mean, check out that video if you want to. The biggest differences at a glance are that the clip is a bit different. The 580 has this facet right there, which the 540 does not. The 580 has more metal. You see a metal bit on the nib collar there. You see a metal bit, this ring here, that should preclude cracking. And the nibs. The nibs are different. I thought this was a Schmidt nib, but maybe that is a B.R.E nib. I'm not absolutely sure. I am sure that this is a Jovo nib. And you can see that. I'm not sure whether I can actually show you this. I need some close-up work for that. But here, I'm taking out a loop there. Well, we don't need that much light. Let me just switch that off. So here, this is the old nib, and here you see that little B on the side. There you go, for broad. Well, you see that's on the side. So you have the TWSBI logo, and there you have that B. I think that was, I know that, I'm pretty sure that B.R.E does that on the TWSBI nibs. Maybe Schmidt did so too, I'm not sure. Now here you have that new Jovo nib. You see that 1.5? That's right below the logo. That's how you can see which nib is which. I didn't figure that out. Someone told me, but it's a nice way to you know, ID the maker of your nib. Okay, so sorry. There we have that. How about taking them apart? Well, the basic thing is the same on the two pens. Let's start with, well, you know, let's start this in chronological order. This is the 540. You can take off the section, just unscrew it. Now what you can do, I always like to put my thumb there and just push down gently. The nib unit, so this is nib, feed and nib color, will pop out. There's a little O-ring there. See that? You shouldn't lose that. And also note that there are ridges, little ridges right there. And there are notches on the inside of the, well, nib collar, I suppose, the section, the grip, whatever you like to call that. They should align. If they don't align, this won't fit and you may cause cracks. So make sure they're aligned well, and then it just slides in there. If you want to remove the nib and the feed, that's possible. You see, you can take them out of the nib color. You just pull them out, and that's all there's to it. Now there's a little hole right there, a sort of groove. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but there is a little groove that aligns with the groove on the underside of the feet. Now, if you don't align them perfectly well, it's fine. You can always twist them just a little bit once they're in there. Okay, so I put that back together. Then you have the barrel with the piston mechanism. You unscrew it about that way. You take one of those TWSBI wrenches. You get them with the pen. It slides in there. Only one way. You see, I just twist it. Slides in there, and then you turn. And then we would go to the left in the West, but you go to the right here, if I'm not mistaken. And you have to be careful about that, because if you go the wrong way, you're going to place stress on this bit and you'll get cracks. This has happened to many people. Okay, so here we go. You take this bit out, and you have the piston housing unit, what I like to call the piston guide. I'm not sure whether that has another name, but you know, this actually guides the piston. It screws in there, as you can see. And then you have the blind cap. Now you can put them all back together. Now I have another shootout, I don't recall which one, but that one that features the 540. And in that shootout I really go into how to align this in such a manner that you will get the biggest capacity in the ink reservoir, because if you go, you can even pop off the actual piston seal. If you do this in the wrong way, so if you first screw that all the way in there, then you cannot get the blind cap on. You see, it won't fit because the piston sticks out there. So you have to fiddle around with that a bit, get the ideal way for you to do this. This is still not far enough. So probably what you want to do, very briefly, is take this, I don't know, about to about that point or something, stick this in, and you just make sure you got this covered. Now what you see is that I still have quite a lot of space there, so that was a bit too far. So maybe what I want to do is I want to twist this up there, up to that point, and you go in here and then you twist again. That looks a lot better. It goes all the way to the back, and this is fairly tight. You would like to have no gap. You see this gap where the little wrench goes into, you don't want to have that, you want that to be too big, because then when you put this back together again, the blind cap will remain a bit loose, and then it twists a bit. But for me, you see, this would be an excellent setup. Okay, then I screw that in place. Don't over tighten anything on these TWSBIs. I mean, it is plastic, so it's a little prone to cracking. Okay, then we have that new 580, and my throat is not actually working along with the video, sorry. Pretty much the same thing. So you unscrew the section, you pop out the nib collar, you have the little metal collar that goes there, then you have the nib and the feed. Had some grease on my fingers, so I'm going to use a tissue to grab that. You got the nib and the feed, and you got your nib collar, and you have the, well, let's call it the section, and then you have this part. Exact same thing. Don't worry, I'm not going to do all of that again, but just, I mean, let me see. This is to the left, so now I want to go to the right. You see it unscrews. Now you can just pop that out. Oops. And there you go. You don't have to fiddle around with this for too long if you don't want to. Right now, yes, there is a bit of space between the piston seal and the actual piston housing unit. Who cares? It will give you a little bit, an ink reservoir that's just a little bit smaller, but it really isn't going to make a huge difference. So for me, that would be absolutely fine. I take this, put it back in place, tighten it just a little bit. As I said, don't overdo it. You put that back in place. This doesn't have that groove, so, but there is, I think, one. It's hard to see. It slides in a specific way. You see, I twist it and then it just goes in there. I'm not sure whether there's a top and bottom side here. Let me see. Nib slides in. Other way around. Nib slides in too. So I guess it doesn't really matter. Alright, then we have this bit. Metal goes on to the grooves again. See those ridges? There we go. Put the section on. There's a little bit of water in there. Screw that back in place. There we go. Boom! I think what we need to do is a writing sample, which isn't going to be extremely fair because we have a 1.5mm italic nib and we have a broad nib, but still, let's do that right now. Okay, so in the left corner we have the original, more or less, the 540. The nib is broad, the ink, Apache Sunset. Then on the other hand, we have the 580. The nib is a 1.5mm italic, and the ink is also Apache Sunset. Clearly this nib is a lot broader than that one. There's nothing you can do, it's just the way the nib is made. Writing with this broad nib, I think this was an old Schmidt nib. This was not yet, what was it, B.R.E. B.R.E. was used for the VAC 700s onward, I think. I think this one's still Schmidt. Very nice. Very smooth nib. The 580 has an italic nib which is also smooth. This is by Jovo. It responds well, it works well. You may see a bit of a skip here and there, but that's because I leave them uncapped, otherwise I have to cap the pens all the time. I'll just slip it in the cap so I can just take it out. Okay. As to wetness, a nice wet line. You see this is a pretty even patch of ink. Looks cool, looks good. 580. Nice wet, a lot broader, so that's to be expected. Okay. What about line variation? As you can see, you can squeeze some out. You don't have to squeeze any out in the 580, but I'm squeezing anyway. Because of the shape of the nib, this would be with no pressure. So this is pressure, this is no pressure. I think that's all pretty nice, simple, works well. Okay, so which pen is best? Well, in all honesty, the pens are very similar. Clearly you cannot make a decision on the nib because you can get, I suppose you could get this pen with that nib too, the 540. 580, 540, as you can see the pens are almost identical. They feel identical, they handle identical. It's just that the 580 has some added protection against cracking. And I think that's really all there's to it. So, I mean, the 540 is discontinued anyway. Just wanted to give you an idea of what the two different pens were like. And to be honest, the difference is negligible. In writing experience, I really don't feel a difference. So, there you have it. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.